What is going on, everyone? Welcome to another very exciting episode right here on the My Gardener channel. In today's episode, I'm going to share with you my strategy for planting out a fall garden. That's right, a strategy. Every season for me has a different strategy, and for me a strategy is kind of a roadmap to success. So if you look at your goals, and how to achieve them. That's your strategy. And so in this episode, I'm going to share with you my strategy, hopefully just to inspire you all and to help you all create your own strategy. Now, I am aware that everybody's goals are going to be different, and so I'm aware that everybody's strategy will be different as well based on those goals. I'm aware that it is starting to rain, so if it starts to rain too hard, we're going to have to go shelter underneath a tree, but I'm going to try my best to get this video done in a short manner so you can take this information, formulate a plan, and get out in the garden with it as soon as possible, because, well, fall is a very fast season. If you don't act quickly, it's gone and you're already in winter. So that being said, let's jump on into today's video. I'm really excited about this topic because I think it's something that a lot of people have asked me about. They'll say, Luke, why do you pick the plants that you pick? What is your rationale behind it? And so my rationale is based on my strategy. So the first thing I want to look at is my high risk, high reward plants. So my high risk, high reward plants are crops like tomatoes. Look at these things. This is amazing. I mean, the amount of tomatoes that I'm getting is just astounding. I'm going to have so many tomatoes to pick, and I've got just loads of them coming on. I also have loads of green ones as well. Now, these were planted in early August. These were planted as a fall harvest of tomatoes. All our other tomato plants are completely dead. Blight has taken them out. The humidity has taken its toll. They've fruited themselves basically to death. And so these plants here were planted specifically as a fall harvest. They were planted at a time when I knew that I would have enough days to get them to fully mature, but I would still be growing them in a fall season. I planted them in August, knowing full well, I planted the plants in early August. I started the seeds in early July. There's a lot of questions surrounding the fall tomato theory. And so I started the seeds actually like the first week in July, about the 4th of July or so, I started the seeds. I planted the plants in like the first week in August. I let them grow and fully mature, and now I'm going to be harvesting tomatoes into, well, late September, even early October. So this is a high risk, high reward plant because I don't know what the fall season is going to bring. I don't know if I'm going to get an early frost. I don't know if the frost is going to be later, if the season is going to be prolonged or not. I really don't know what the season is going to bring. And so things like this, cucumbers, zucchinis, tomatoes, these are high risk, high reward plants. I don't plant out my entire garden with these as well. You'll notice this is like 3/4 of a bed. And then I planted out 3/4 of another bed with zucchinis and cucumbers. Those are my high risk, high reward plants. And that only comprises about 5% of my total garden space. That's because I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket when it comes to high risk, high reward plants, because high risk, high reward, if I risk everything and I put all my eggs in one basket and let's say I get an early frost, well, I get nothing. I have nothing to show for it for all that effort and all that time. Now, 10% of my garden are planted out with perennials. Perennials for me are kind of very low risk, very high reward. You're guaranteed to get something because of the fact they're perennials. They grow in all seasons of the year. That's why they're perennial. So they're going to grow in spring, summer, and fall. And the fact that things like strawberries, they're going to yield tons of fruit. So they have very little downside to huge upside. But the fact that perennials are kind of limited as to what I can grow. There's not a whole lot of variety out there. So things like strawberries, thyme, sage, and oregano, as well as mint and chives. Those are kind of my perennial plants that I'll grow. So there's not a whole lot of them. That's why they only take up about 10% of my total garden space. It is really raining out here. I don't know if you can see it. It's like a very thick, misty rain. We might have to go duck for cover pretty soon, but let's get this video going. So that is 10% of my garden is dedicated to perennials. The remaining garden space is dedicated to very, low risk, kind of low reward. They're crops that are not my favorite crops to grow, but they thrive in the season that I'm being given. They thrive in cool, damp, wet weather. They thrive in late season. Things like leafy greens. So I've got a bunch here that I'm going to show you all, and this is kind of my thought process behind why I pick these plants. So when I'm picking out these plants, the first thing I look for is how many days to my first frost. I have 45 days to my first frost right now. I'm going to plant plants that have about 45 to 55 days to fully mature. I'm also going to plant plants that can tolerate cold weather and survive a frost. That's because based on a 20-year moving average, studies have found that after the first frost, you will typically get a warming trend of around 5 to 7 days above freezing. That's because as the season is cooling, it's dipping and it's rising and dipping, rising and dipping. And with these peaks and valleys, you get temperature swings, right? Different fronts that are moving through as the weather changes. So you have 50s, 40s, 45s, low, high 30s, like maybe low 40s, low 30s, maybe like getting real close to your frost point, right? These ebbs and flows. As the season starts to continue to get colder, your peaks and valleys get a little shorter. So you're getting like the mid 40s to like low 40s where you're getting a frost, right? But your first frost typically comes when a front moves through. And so when a front moves through, you're going to get that really kind of sporadic weather. Lots of wind, usually some rain. It'll go from the 40s down to like your 30s for your low. You'll get a frost. Then what will happen is the front will move through and things will warm up again. But because it warms up, it doesn't warm up as high as before. It doesn't warm up to like in the 50s, it might, but generally it'll warm up into like the low 40s. And it'll stay there for a few days as the temperature begins to then settle down into like your steady fall temperatures, getting a frost almost every night. And then it gets into like the low, the high 20s, low 30s as your consistent range. And that's just kind of how the season settles. So I bank on the fact that I have 45 days to my first frost, and then I have an additional 5 to 7 days on top of that that are hopefully going to be frost-free after that first initial frost. Because again, I'm using data as my friend. 5 to 7 days after that first frost are afforded to me if I can survive that first frost. So the crops that I pick not only are going to be fast maturing, but can also survive a frost. And I can repurpose them even if a frost comes a whole lot sooner. So that being said, let's jump on into those varieties. Like I said, I got turnips here. Turnips are a great example. They are like 45 days to fully mature. Those are fine. Beets, even if I don't get beets themselves in about 50 to 55 days, I can still eat beet greens. Very beneficial, super delicious. They can handle some cold weather. Kale. I love kale because kale is a crop that I can grow, but if I get an early frost, it can survive the frost just fine, but I can harvest it as early as I want to. Because it's a leafy green, I can harvest things a week after growing them. As soon as they have adult leaves, I can start harvesting them and eating them. So I have kale. Spinach. Spinach is a crop that, no question, can go in a fall garden. It can survive frost, it can survive freezes. It pretty much can grow even when there's snow on the ground. So spinach is one that you can grow 30 to 45 days. It's a great one. Arugula, you're talking like 40 days to fully mature. Even if I don't get a full 40 days in my growing season, I can harvest it early just like other things. Lettuce, I have different types of lettuce here. Lettuce is a great example. I can grow that. I can harvest it pretty much whenever as well, just like beets. I can harvest the lettuce greens as leafy greens rather than full heads. I don't have to worry about how long it's growing. As long as it is growing, I can still harvest it and repurpose it. But if I do happen to get a frost, it can survive. Cilantro, we've grown cilantro all through winter, so there's really no issue with cilantro. Very, very cold hardy, but you're looking at about 40 to 55 days to fully mature. And so again, even if I get an early frost, I can still grow it past the frost point, or if I'm forced to, I can still harvest it early because all I need is a few leaves and I have cilantro. There's no definitive I need to harvest this now point. It's ready whenever you're ready to harvest it. Things like broccoli. Now broccoli is kind of risky. It's kind of like it's a little risky, but what makes it not so risky is the fact that I can eat the broccoli leaves. I can eat the broccoli leaves just like I can kale or collards and things like that. I can saute up the young leaves so I don't have to worry about getting a head of broccoli. If I do, fantastic, but if I don't, I have broccoli leaves to fall back on. That way I'm still repurposing, still consuming this plant, even if it does not come to full maturity, come to full fruition. I can still achieve my plans of my fall garden, which is creating food for my family, covering the soil to protect it, always growing something somewhere, because I'd much rather grow something than nothing. Radishes, love radishes. Plant them in the fall. Don't have to worry about them. 25 days to fully mature. You don't have to worry. Cabbages, same thing as the broccoli, right? Same thing as the broccoli. Even if I don't get fully mature cabbage heads, I can still harvest the greens. I don't have to worry about the fact that, yeah, I have a frost coming in about 45 to 55 days. These take about 55 to 60 days to fully mature, these early varieties, these earlier heading varieties of cabbage, 55 to 60 days. I'm pushing the limits. I know that I might not have success getting a fully sized head of cabbage, but even if I don't and I have to harvest it early, oh well. I can still saute the leaves up. I can still use the leaves just as I would normally. I just don't have heads of cabbage. So it's still something I can repurpose and consume. Turnips is another one. Like I said, turnips, fantastic. And then I have more lettuce, and cabbage. So those are ones, you can even plant things like carrots as well. There are so many different crops. Peas is another one. You can plant peas, mustard greens. There's so many crops that you can grow right now that have enough days to maturity that are very low risk. They might not be your all-time favorite crops to grow, but they are crops that will grow. They will thrive in the weather that you have, and they will produce food for your family. That is the bulk majority of the remaining 85% of our garden. So 5% is high risk, high reward, 10% is perennials, and then I would say about 75% or so are those crops right there, maybe 70 to 75%. And then the remaining, if I don't have room for anything else and I don't want to plant it out, I cover it. I take leaves, I take straw, and I cover it. I put it to bed. Or I'll take some semi-finished compost and I'll cover it with that. If I'm not going to plant it out, I cover it. But that's only maybe about 5 to 10% of my garden. The rest of it is growing something for me, because my first goal is to produce food for my family. The second goal is to save money on my food bill. The third goal is to cover the soil, to protect the soil quality. And then the fourth goal is to grow something. The whole point of being a gardener is to grow something. If I'm not growing something, well, then I'm not a gardener. I'd much rather watch something grow. And even if I don't have it, come to full maturity, the fact that I've picked crops that I can still consume, that I can still enjoy, the most of my, the bulk majority of my garden is stuff that can survive that first frost, that can mature quickly, that can still produce food for my family. And so those are the crops that I pick. That is why I pick them, and that is my strategy for fall gardening. I hope you guys enjoyed. I hope you learned something new. If you did enjoy, make sure to throw a like up there. At least throw a like up there for me duking it out with the rain. But hopefully you guys enjoyed, hopefully you learned something new. And as always, this is Luke from the My Gardener channel, reminding you to grow big or go home, and we'll catch you all later. Oh, and one last thing is we're not going to see you for a little bit. Mrs. My Gardener and I are actually going on our honeymoon. That's right, it's been a long time coming. So wish us a happy honeymoon in the comments box down below, and we'll see you in a few days. We are going to take a small break. Don't worry, we'll be back, but we're going to take a honeymoon over on the East Coast. I will be bringing my camera along, so if I see anything worth filming, and if you bump into me on the East Coast, wave and say hi. That's okay. I appreciate it as well. But we are going to be out of state. We're going to be gone for a little bit, and that's okay. So everyone needs to take a little break every once in a while. So we'll catch you all when we get back, or if we see something interesting on the way. All right. Grow big or go home, everyone. Bye.